Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Good Book Club, our Lazy Learner Discussion Edition on Tuesday night. It's October 11th, and it's 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Before we officially get started with our presentation we're so excited about tonight, we're going to mention a few of our upcoming events, just for those of you that are book club members. On the 23rd, Sunday at 11 a.m. Mountain Time, we have our regular book club meeting. We are reading Early Mormonism and the Magic World View by D. Michael Quinn, a perfect book for the Halloween season. This is more of a multimedia fun presentation, almost like a lecture. So if you haven't read the book, please still join us. It's going to be absolutely incredible and amazing. I already have my magic wand, so we're really looking forward to that. So that's on the 23rd coming up. And on the 1st, we have another bonus event on a Tuesday evening, and that's going to be with Shoshone elder and storyteller Darren Perry, and he's going to be talking to us about the Bear River Massacre. There is a book that accompanies that if anybody wants to read it. It's called The Bear River Massacre, Shoshone History. It's on Amazon. It's a very quick read. Again, you don't have to read the book to talk about it, but Darren's going to come and chat with us. It's going to be amazing. So now on to tonight. This is part of our Lazy Learner discussion series where we talk about something new, maybe something we don't know very much about, or something we've always been very curious about, something we'd like to learn about. So tonight we are so excited to have Matt and Tricia Harward, who are going to talk to us about, what did I call it? A post-Mormon adventure in alternative healing. So that's kind of a cryptic title, but it's going to be amazing. So I'm going to read their bio very quickly. Of course, I can't see that, so I'm going to be reading it off my phone. Give me 1 second while I pull that up, and we'll introduce them, and then we'll get started. Matt and Tricia Harward have been together since 1993. They live in Austin, Texas, and they have 4 kids ranging from 27 down to 16. Matt owns a software development company, and Tricia works as a breathwork practitioner, a new field of practice in which they're both certifying, with plans to open a small wellness center together in early 2003. They love to hike, swim, and travel. Hold on 1 second. Now I have to read it from there. They love to, I'm sorry, now I'm lost. That's so funny. Oh my gosh, hold on a second. I only took a picture of one of it and I literally
finish it.
I got it.
Oh my God,
They love to hike, swim, and travel
how
together.
awkward. They love to hike, swim, and travel together. Now, they want to remind you that they are not experts. They make no claims, and they share their own personal experiences with psychedelics, with the caveat that everyone will have their very own unique interaction with plant medicines. So that being said, we are absolutely thrilled to welcome Matt and Tricia Harward. Yay!
Hello.
Hi, thank you. We're so happy to be here. Thanks for asking us to participate in this. It was really cool for us both to kind of revisit some of the experiences that we've had and figure out why we're doing this in the first place. So thank you for this. Do you want to just get started?
Mm-hmm.
So in true Mormon fashion, I will go first and do the introduction. Although I'll just introduce myself. So I grew up in and around Utah for the most part, and I was the 17th child collectively of zealously faithful and dogmatic parents who were each on their second temple marriage after divorce. We were that family that marched right up to the front row of the chapel in matching dresses. But our home life was sometimes violent and often chaotic and unpredictable. And I found a lot of solace in the certainty of church life. And I found approval in being the quintessential good girl. I met Matt at 20 years old in a young adult ward where his dad was the bishop. And I fell madly in love with him, and the feeling was mutual. So we made plans to marry within weeks of meeting each other. Our entire courtship was 4 months, beginning to end. We had children soon after that, and Matt worked a minimum of 2 jobs at all times to keep our little family afloat while I took care of everything at home. Most Sundays, church responsibilities consumed him, and he was so busy during the week that we hardly saw him. And though I loved being a mom, there were some really lonely days for me, and I think for him too. And that lasted until we moved to Texas in 2006, where at least for a while we had fewer demands on our time. And we were able to reconnect here in a place without like family and a lot of distractions. And we realized here just how much we really loved each other. And it was a really beautiful time for our family and for our marriage. Eventually, church and work began to consume all our free time again. But for many years, we felt really connected to our church community, and our kids mostly flourished, and life was pretty good. I don't know if I mentioned that we had 4 kids along the way. So around 2013, when our youngest child was about 7, I found myself sort of, I think unconsciously looking around for mentors. And with my daughter's growing independence, I could kind of, for the first time, see motherhood's end. And I just started searching for other Mormon women who had moved into the next stage of life beyond that identity. And I was curious about what was next, because I had honestly never really paid attention to what was, coming after motherhood. So for me, it was just kind of like, it was alarming to note that as I kind of looked around, everyone I encountered was kind of sad. Like no one seemed particularly happy or vibrant or excited about the stage they were in, unless they spoke of their grandchildren. At that time, I was pretty tired of thinking about kids. And so I just wondered if there was something more. And I don't know, I had a few disturbing conversations with older women who would laughingly describe themselves as being put out to pasture. And although I tried for years, I never did find a future version of myself that just felt congruent with my heart. And by the time Matt was called to be the bishop in 2015, I was dangerously close to a full-blown midlife crisis. So, of course, with that new calling, he was busier than ever and never home. And those memories of sitting by the window, missing him and hoping to hear his car pull up, those all resurfaced. And I was just, again, profoundly lonely. And I was slowly losing my sense of who I was and what I was here to do. And church began to feel like a retread and offered me nothing that I could see in terms of personal growth. And I was also deeply averse to like taking on this like ambiguous role of like mother of the ward. And there were just so many other things that were interesting to me beyond like baking cookies and babysitting and like nurturing everyone. I just didn't feel that pull anymore. And so I just slowly began to fade away from the church emotionally. It took a couple of years, but by the time Matt called me to be the gospel doctrine teacher, which was an interesting move on his part, I had deconstructed basically all of my beliefs. And I was just holding on to support him. We had some really painful conversations and cried a lot of tears together. But eventually, Matt was able to see that I was standing in my integrity, and he honored my choice to leave. And he even offered to be released from his calling early so I could go. So this is in November of 2018. And at that time, we considered ourselves to be in a mixed faith marriage. I don't know. What's that?
Doorbell.
Anyway, we were in a mixed faith marriage. And at that point, we were participating online with a supportive group of couples who were in a similar situation. We were really involved in a particular Facebook group. And then in early 2019, a bunch of us from that group went on a cruise together. And it was there that we had our first introduction to the idea of using psychedelics to heal past wounds, including things like, past marital pain and difficulties. So.
Amen. And I'm Matt. I will skip over some of the sections that Trish already covered, but I grew up in a very Orthodox home as well, Bountiful, Utah. I am the third of 6 kids. And my dad was actually a career church employee. He was a seminary and institute teacher, and actually taught me for 2 of the 4 years of seminary that I was in, junior high and high school. He would follow us to our schools so that he could be in the school with us wherever we were. Some of the kids liked that, some of them didn't. I actually liked it. I have a good relationship with my dad, but it was an interesting and spotlighty kind of a growing up. My mom, very perfectionist. She's this typical bionic homemaker that does it all. And she really did and needed to, because we had 6 kids in the family and lived on a teacher's salary. And my dad always had a second job. And we helped him in that very often. So like Trish, we were kind of the front seaters in the ward. We had the bench kind of blocked out, and that was our place in the pew. And just in terms of some of the challenging elements, I came from a read between the lines family. Emotions are better not shared, but inferred. Conflict and argument is a sin and always leads to tears and problems. So we learned to not communicate directly, but you had to really get good at being able to read each other. And oftentimes that was difficult. My parents had some emotional, especially with my mom, some emotional wounds of her own. And so I was kind of an emotional caregiver of sorts, along with my siblings in a way, but it was important for us to keep everybody happy, and especially her. So we learned how to do that, to try to make sure that we were keeping things happy at home. So I was the fixer peacemaker. That was my role in the family. Happy, strong believer. The church was made for somebody like me. I actually really enjoyed my experience in a lot of ways. There were challenges there. I actually personally have had some sexual abuse that had happened to me as a child. We also had some other types of just normal conflicts and wounds in family to deal with, along with just the norms that everybody gets to deal with. My dad actually had a second business in order to help pay the bills, landscaping business. So from the time I was 12 years old, I worked with him. And by the time I was 14 or so, I was basically running his crew, and then running the business almost primarily from the time I was 16. And so I learned to kind of manage a company, and actually that led to a lot of my business pursuits. I've founded and started, and currently I'm in my 4th startup, technology primarily, but I carried on the landscaping tradition, and that put us through college. That was the second full-time job that Trish was referring to that we did for many years while I was kind of getting my background and experience in my college and an early career. Regarding church and other personal things, I've always been given many opportunities for leadership. So between school, career, and church, things like student body president, president of all the forums growing up, assistant to the president on my mission, business owner and CEO of my companies, stake high council and bishopric member, and then bishop later, as well as other stake callings, stake mission leader and other things. But the last calling was bishop. So I personally had what Trish likes to call Matt Church, not Mormon Church. which was I was very much a nuanced believer. There were things that I just didn't. I'm just more of a grace and love and Jesus centric. So the thought and of idea of obedience first was always something that I struggled with. But I really loved the teachings that I learned when it comes to the New Testament, especially the Gospels, and had a very close relationship at that time with Jesus. And that was kind of the fuel for my personal testimony. Because we were in such high profile, or I was in such high profile places, and it was important to me, it also became a big part of my identity. I'm sure some of you can relate to that. It also led to challenges, right? So Trish mentioned this, I was gone all the time. So we were home for a few hours on maybe once or twice. And then other than that, I was gone from early in the morning until late at night, pretty much 7 days a week. When you give Sunday was the same thing for church. And so you can imagine how that kind of led to some cracks in our relationship and just the fatigue and loneliness and other things that comes just from a busy lifestyle and some of the things I'm sure that you relate to. I did love the service and the opportunity to commune. I think there's some beauty in that. And I take away a lot of gratitude for the things that helped to form me when it comes to my experience in the church. However, there were also challenges, and some of you may relate, lots of never enough feelings, lots of guilt, and a lot of exhaustion. And so I remembered thinking, if this is the plan of happiness, why is it that nobody seems to be very happy, including me? So there were parts to it I really did love. And I loved the fact that we had a family that we communed together on, and it gave us a place to raise our kids and otherwise. But it was a struggle in some respects. Now, when Trish actually started her midlife crisis and then faith transition for herself, that was a test really quickly on a marriage, but gratefully it didn't take us long to choose each other. And we have a lot of foundational love and respect for each other. And I realized quickly that whatever we needed to do, I wanted to do it together. So that's when we started on the mixed faith side. But I realized in doing that, there were some things, obviously struggling with feeling wounding and betrayal, fear and resentment toward her, toward God, confusion of what went wrong, guilt, and some of those kinds of things. So there were a lot of emotional wounds that went with those tears that Trish talked about, that I think we both actually had a lot of confusion and some pain that we had to deal with. But the one thing that I always came back to was, one, I knew that I loved her, and I knew of her integrity, and I knew of my own integrity, and that we were both doing the very best that we could, and we're doing all the things that the best that we knew. So I never had any question about that. And as such, when she started having her questions, rather than reject those, thankfully, maybe not initially, but ultimately listened. And then as I was continuing to practice, and she stopped going after I got released from being the bishop, it was evident to me that being there was not where I needed to be when it came to my family. There was a lot of tension and things that we chose to kind of separate and go that route. After that time, I was digging in to understand a lot of where she was coming from, and then went down the rabbit hole, as they say, with her. Sorry. Oh. Anyway, with all of that, long story short, both of us have since left the church. So that was kind of the elements that kind of took us up to where I guess we start our parts about the psychedelics.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, we had that first encounter with like the idea of what is this thing, psychedelics. when we were interacting with our friends from our mixed faith marriage group. And on the cruise we took together in early 2019, some of our friends kind of alluded to these substances, but they were very cautious and only shared really tiny tidbits with us because I think they were unsure of whether we were ready to join them on this wild ride. So we went home with very little information, but a lot of curiosity. And so I began researching a couple of the names I could recall from things that they sort of mentioned. And although, you know, like what I read kind of terrified me, but I couldn't deny that I was extremely intrigued by this idea. So my main interest was the promise of finding healing from past wounding and deep traumas, which I knew were in there, but I was really struggling to access them in traditional therapy. So this is a really appealing idea to me personally. But ultimately, at that point, we shelved it all because being Mormons our whole lives had left us totally unprepared for how to find these substances in the first place. So then, almost by magic or intervention, we had a chance encounter. I had a chance encounter with an ex-Mormon friend a few months later, and she provided us with our first opportunity to try what our cruise friends had been so secretive about. So MDMA was ours if we wanted it, and I only had to convince the still active and believing Matt at that time that taking ecstasy was an absolutely fabulous idea. So lucky for me, and shockingly, he agreed. He's a very open-minded person. So I somehow convinced him to do it with me on his birthday a couple weeks later. So Matt's going to share that experience, but I just wanted to add this FYI. MDMA is not necessarily a classic psychedelic, but in our experience, it was a great introduction to the concept of altered states of consciousness. So it's a synthetic drug that alters your mood and your perception, but just enough to leave you with like a lessened ego and a wide open heart. So by the way, it's currently being tested and researched, and approval for its use for the treatment of PTSD is likely only months away. So that's really cool. And it should soon be moved from Schedule 1 status. So there you go.
Okay, so Trish wanted me to share just some of the highlights of the experience. This was probably one of the most impactful experiences of my life. It was basically going into it. We trusted the friendships that we had, and we were both working toward trying to get through and to our next chapter with our marriage, and had picked up some of those wounds, and 25 years of marriage will do that to you anyway. But we were really committed to doing what we could to get ourselves to a place that was better. And after having a lot of conversation with folks, decided that this was something we'd be willing to try. It was, in essence, for me, a washing away of 25 years of hurt and judgment. And I literally felt like it was a reset all the way back to when we were first married. And just those feelings were just kind of washed over us. And we had really good connecting time. And it was a beautiful reset for our relationship. And I can probably say that was a key success in actually the healing and success for a marriage. It was absolutely critical for that. And I'm grateful for it. A lot of people kind of describe it as 10 years of therapy in one night. And it certainly proved to be like that for us. A couple of the other things that I noted from it, number one, it turned my thinking on its head with regards to what was labeled as good and what was labeled as bad. Obviously, something like that we'd always been taught was the wrong thing to do. but my experience with it was so powerfully positive that it kind of opened my mind to be thinking about what these types of things could offer, and the kinds of experiences that we had that have continued to be very powerfully healing. So, and it also kind of gave me the sense of being open to finding the good wherever it is, even if that's fairly unconventional. So I'm already, as Trish mentioned, a nuanced kind of thinker. And so this really was a powerful message to me about finding good where it can be found. And then lastly there, a great and powerful experience in forgiveness and love in that one night that I feel to this day, both for myself and for my wife, and our experience together. It was also because of some of that reverse, I guess, challenging of good versus bad things. It was a big kind of hook on my actual eventual leaving of the church, because there was so much good there that I couldn't deny. And so that was actually fairly key in that process. I think that's it.
So the next time that our paths crossed with psychedelics, that was a few months later. By that time, Matt was fully out of the church, and we were spending a lot of time with our local ex-Mormon group, who were teaching us a lot about coffee and alcohol and tattoos and basically how not to be a dork. So one night when we were all together, a friend casually mentioned that they happened to be growing their own medicinal mushrooms, and did we want to try them? And so I enthusiastically and without thinking just said, yes, let's do it. And so we arranged to pick it up. And
your baby milk is over there.
Anyway, we picked it up, we took it home, and I immediately hid it under the bed because I was terrified of what could happen if somebody found out we had this dangerous contraband. But I was also super excited about trying it out. So the timing was great because we had already planned a trip to San Francisco. So when that time came, I smuggled that bootleg into my bag. And I really wanted to take it while I was sitting next to the Pacific Ocean. So as soon as we got to the hotel, I curled up with my headphones, an eye mask, a carefully curated playlist, and a journal. And Matt was ready to guide me through the evening. So this is probably a good place to say that there are few things as boring as the retelling of a psychedelic trip. So I'll share only that it was remarkable in every possible way. I see everything about my life now in terms of before that first trip and after, because of how completely my carefully constructed reality burned to the ground that night, which created fertile soil for everything.
Sorry.
That's okay. It just created fertile soil for everything that has grown there since. So that's not to say that everything that hurt inside me was suddenly soothed and made soft, but in that small window where my ego went to sleep, I experienced some profoundly important truths that I had been blind to, including the gift of being able to see the role I was playing in my own unhappiness and pain. So that was really powerful. And I treasure it.
So various different experiences with mushrooms that we've had over the last few years. It has been a very powerful and kind of gentle spiritual awakening, so to speak. A lot of introspection and connection to me with spirituality. I still feel very deeply about relationship with higher power. Not sure how I would define God at this point, other than to say I do believe that there is good and higher power, whether that's collective consciousness or some sort of organized deity. I'm not sure. What I do know or feel, at least for me, that it was that I feel like there's certainly something bigger than just me. And a big part of the, I guess, mushroom experience was some of the existential questions that kind of came up when we separated from the church. Answering questions like, where did we come from? Who are we? Where are we going? All the things that we had learned from young, all of a sudden that stuff just got ripped right out from under us. And that was an important thing to me. And so my mushroom experiences have helped to reframe my relationship with and a character of God and my relationship with them, and my current views, which are continuing to kind of grow and evolve. And one of the things, and I'm sure many of you can relate, is I think that we're always in a constant state of learning and growth. And so I'm open to that. As things change and as I learn, I'm going to continue to grow and evolve into whatever that continues to be. But what it did do for me was give me a real existential sense of understanding of what life was, that and that there was purpose, why I'm here and who am I. Was able to answer a lot of those very deep questions in a way that I had actually never been able to do with so much clarity before. It also helped me with embracing of uncertainty rather than running from it, and realizing that the mystery is part of what life really is about. And so coming to understand and embrace that has allowed us to kind of open ourselves to experience and to learn, and then to take the moments, the todays, and make them count. And so a lot of that I owe to those experiences. Another big element for me, as I was growing through, I always had felt a strange kind of confusion about the lack of kind of a feminine divine in my upbringing and in my personal experience. The women in my life, starting with Tricia, have always been powerful, healing, wise, beautiful people. And it was always confusing to me that that wasn't really part of what we were taught. It was always platitudes and othering in ways that didn't make sense. So mushrooms was really powerful for me in developing my own sense of divine feminine, as well as kind of throwing off some of the scales of the patriarchal mentality and embracing more of an egalitarian sense of both my relationship with my wife and really people at large. So I take that to be a beautiful blessing. And I actually did find a lot of healing. Actually went back through a couple of these experiences and was able to heal find and heal a traumatized little boy that had been hurt all those years ago. Beautiful, and something that has blessed me ever since. All of those things were across a number of mushroom experiences, but those were some of the highlights.
So the next psychedelic we became intimately acquainted with came at the hands of one of those same cruise ship friends. We had grown close to one couple whose active and believing spouse had also left the church, and the four of us decided that we wanted to go on vacation together.
Okay.
So our friend told us of someone that she knew who had taken ayahuasca down in Costa Rica and had highly recommended it. So I enthusiastically, and again without thinking, said, yes, let's do it. So I didn't even ask Matt, but I did begin to research it and learned it was often accompanied by purging in the form of a lot of vomiting and some diarrhea. And that gave me pause. I had to rethink it for a few days, but ultimately we booked the trip. And it's because we have learned to say yes to things that scare us. And yes, it was scary. And yes, we purged. So ayahuasca is both different and similar to mushrooms. We can answer questions, as much as we know, at the end. But usually it's more intense than mushrooms. But it has a similar kind of feminine spirit. that leads you to feel loved and nurtured and held as you're guided to important truths. There are a lot of contraindications with ayahuasca compared to mushrooms, and a diet that must be followed prior to consuming it. So in that way, they're pretty different. So mushrooms are usually ingested as simply dried mushrooms, but ayahuasca is brewed over several hours into a thick tea that tastes pretty terrible. It's also customary to consume ayahuasca ceremonially with other people there to support your journey. That part is pretty important.
Yeah. You're done?
Yeah.
Okay. For me, and again, Trish asked me to kind of share experiences that I learned, and she's kind of sharing the details about each of them. So that's what we're doing. Some of the things I got from the ayahuasca experience, I've done it twice, and by twice meaning 2 weeks worth. So a total of, for me, I think that was 7 different ceremonies.
Yeah.
Trish did 12, has done 12. And anyway, between those 2 different ceremonies, I had a really big, I think the biggest thing for me that was hard of opening was coming to peace with the warring head and heart. A lot of people talk about this as an ego and overcoming an ego. It definitely does kind of help break down that resistance. But I found that rather than seeing that as an enemy that I was trying to kind of put down or silence, I learned that those 2 elements, head and heart, are actually both important, and learning to live in harmony between those 2 in supportive ways has been a really big, beautiful part of this psychedelic journey for me personally. And I think Trish would share that same kind of concept. Some of the things that I actually learned from it as I was kind of putting the ego down, I had a big white knight savior complex, always being in charge, always being the one with the answers. I realized that I was carrying the world to the point of exhaustion in myself, and also kind of a sense of needing to be not just in charge, but there to help other people, sometimes at the expense of myself, and sometimes when those people didn't need or want it. Do you want to advance the slides? Do you have pictures?
I don't have control.
Do you have pictures you want to tell
Oh,
somebody
yeah.
to go?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, there you go. In fact, if you want, you can take each through. I'll take just a minute. This is one of the shaman that we had moments where you would spend time, but we did it in a group ceremony. You see various people there. We did ours in Costa Rica. And we would talk about intentions, and if we were frustrated or stuck or had questions, there was always somebody there. And then all the while there was, I don't know, at least a dozen, maybe 20 kind of facilitators or helpers that were kind of working through the group. So we did a large group type of ceremony. Some do smaller groups. Next slide. This is what it looked like.
This is all I
Is this the other one?
have.
Oh,
So,
were you going to cover all this?
not necessarily. I'm just telling you.
Oh, I'm
This is all
sorry.
we have.
I thought you were saying that they wanted advance. My apologies. Let me go back here and then I'll let Trish finish the slides. Things that I had learned. Next one, ability to forgive and heal from past shame and wounds and broken relationships. A lot of forgiveness and an ability to let go of stories that I had, in many cases, didn't even know that I had been holding on to. But ayahuasca does a beautiful job of helping you to see what you just didn't recognize or see, and then deal with that in a kind and useful way. Very similar to the Molly or the MDMA. It's like intense therapy in a single session. In addition to those things, ability to recognize my own masks that I've been creating and through my own ego to protect myself and to set myself up in the best way possible, and realizing how those stories were actually not serving me. I was able to make peace with and allow my heart to lead rather than my head. in making decisions, in learning to trust, in being more vulnerable, in creating intimacy, and free and open, loving relationships. I think my wife would agree I'm a better husband and a better father than I ever was before. And I think based on the efforts that we've made through all of this season of our life, that's definitely been something that we've benefited from. And part of that journey is through the psychedelics that we've had together. Another element was not being threatened by change or by differences of others, and creating and embracing a reality that was based in seeing the beauty in other people, especially those who are different than me, rather than seeing those people as threatening or somebody that needed my attention or my saving. It took some real deprogramming. I think the church teachings went deep on that one for me. And so I'm super happy about that as being something that's really freed me up to have more authentic relationships and learn a lot more than I give in many ways in many relationships. And then the last one that I probably would mention there is a realization that I have, and that we all have, all of the tools that we need already within us to heal and to find and follow our life purpose. I've had more spiritual experiences, more answers to prayers, as they say, more clarity and more focused direction and change in my life in the last, I guess, 3 or 4 years that we've been on this journey together than I had ever had in my entire life combined before then. We're very blessed and have found a great deal of healing. And for me, I don't know how Trish would define it, but for me, a real continuation of a spiritual journey that I find just not just sacred, but very fulfilling. So those are probably my highlights.
So this picture, just to kind of give you a reference, this is the, it's called a maloka, and it is it's like a temple of sorts on the grounds where we stayed and took ayahuasca. You can see the buckets there at the ends of the mattresses where you do a lot of vomiting. Not everyone, but that is definitely part of it. And it gets very, it gets pretty wild in there, but it is a sacred and beautiful space. Just, yeah. So I personally sat with ayahuasca in 12 ceremonies, like Matt said. Yeah. So Matt and I did 4 together, like he said, in early 21, and then I did 8 on my own several months later. So the first 4 brought really profound healing, including the mending of a deep and jagged mother wound that I didn't even realize that I had. And it was timely because my mother passed away 6 weeks after I got home from that trip. Just brought a lot of healing. The second time I went because I felt called by like a really powerful voice, I guess, that was asking me to come back and heal some ancestral trauma, which I couldn't begin to explain or understand, but I was happy to do it and even excited to go. So that was a year ago. And I spent 2 weeks again in Costa Rica on my own, attending ceremony after ceremony. And that time the medicine was very strong and in a lot of ways very frightening. I faced some really terrifying demons and visions of horrific abuse that I could only assume had come through my family lines. I did not understand what I was seeing or experiencing at all. And each successive night as we prepared for ceremony, my body would go into a state of fight or flight. Like I knew the pain and terror that I was likely going to face before the sun came up again. And I was really, really scared. But I just hung on and I kept going because I just knew there would be this neat and tidy, happy ending to all this difficulty, and it would all make sense when it was all over. But the final night came and my hoped for outcome did not materialize. And I was devastated. to say the least. I went home utterly confused by that voice that had led me into total bewilderment. And it was really difficult. So I shared this story to emphasize a point about the importance of allowing time for integration. That is a really big part of participating in psychedelics. A lot of psychedelic experiences like culminate in powerful clarity and cohesion, and allows you to walk away with answers to many of the questions and concerns that you maybe started with. But just as often, you'll be left with a half-finished puzzle, with the remaining pieces meant to be put into place in the days and weeks following your journey or trip. So integration is so important. It's like the internal shift that has to take place to allow you to live in this new reality within this new perspective. So like your external reality may not have changed, but because something has changed so deeply internally, it often feels like you've stepped into a new life. It's a death and rebirth cycle, which is always difficult to surrender to because it requires your submission to the unknown and asks you to sit in a really uncomfortable liminal space for a while. And for me, it was a lot like the process of leaving the church, like the old me dying and then being reborn into a brand new reality. And that just takes some time and some patience and some effort. You can't just passively allow it to happen. It actually took months of meditation and journaling and studying and feeling the depths of my feelings before I could fully integrate everything that happened during that 2-week visit to Costa Rica. And through the process, I eventually entered a new reality with a new perspective. And it was that I was left with no more victim stories. I had no one to blame but myself for my life and my choices. And I think in the end, what made my integration so difficult was that I was really resistant to let go of the lies that I had been telling myself, because it meant that I would be stripped bare of my defenses and I would really have to see myself for the first time. And that was probably what I was most afraid of. So as painful as that process was, it left me completely empowered to live the life that I wanted without any more excuses. So ayahuasca was the catalyst, but the integration itself was easily the most transformational experience of my life. And I continue to gain insights from it to this day. I found this quote from Carl Jung that I thought was so fitting. He said, "People will do anything, no matter how absurd, in order to avoid facing their own souls. One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And that painful process of learning to transmute our own darkness is really where the power and beauty of psychedelic medicine lies. So all that to say, plant medicines are not for everyone. And we've had to work to put down our like Mormon missionary programming and stop proselytizing the gospel of psychedelics to everyone we meet and everyone that we know. We've annoyed a lot of people. But that being said, if you feel open to the experience or feel called to it in some way, here's some things that you should know. Number one, psychedelics invite you to confront yourself. They also ask you to surrender your paradigms and consider another reality. And third, they invite you to fully experience the present moment just as you are, without all your usual defenses and tricks of your ego. So it's in this space where real transformation happens. And it's so beautiful.
Amen.
Yes.
So just a few other thoughts as we were thinking. If you do choose to do some of the things we did the MDMA together. We have done actually our experiences with mushrooms. We've actually not done them together so that we could actually sit with and for the other. And that's actually worked well for us because it really gives one person kind of the full focus.
We did sit with a shaman. Oh, no, we didn't do it together.
We didn't do it together. We've done a couple with some shaman, and then ayahuasca always with the shaman, mushrooms always with the sitter, and a few times with a particular shaman. So we've had kind of some mixed experiences there. And as Trish had mentioned, that integration is a big deal. We'll go months and months between because we get so much to work on. I always journal quickly just at the end and always come up with some things. And then we spend months of time working on those things. And we don't really feel to do it again until we've really been able to practice and integrate in big ways. So it's not something that you're just like getting addicted to this idea of being in the surfing the stars or something. It's not like that. It's a lot of actual hard work and healing, and it takes time. So I think for us, it's been good just with the kind of maturity of the years and age that we've been at, that it's been really a beautiful experience. So last couple of thoughts. You probably heard of this before, but set and setting. That means you've got the proper mindset with intentions. So you go in to each event with a particular kind of set of goals that you really sit with to see what really feels like the right thing to do. Anything from forgiveness to learning about life purpose to letting go of traumas, all sorts, right? But coming in with a particular intention, then the medicine actually helps you go that direction. And I can say, I don't know if you feel differently, but pretty much without exception, it's been very effective at answering those intentions. It's never been what I thought it would be, but it's always been what I needed. And it sometimes doesn't make any sense, but then when you're done, you realize how wise that was and how you could never have come up with that any other way. And that's been my experience. It sounds like Trish too. So set and setting, coming in with a set of intentions, and then the setting. This means no distractions. It means quiet place.
Feeling safe, really safe with people that you feel very comfortable with.
Right.
Yeah.
And private, right? So it's there's meditation or healing type of music going on. Eye mask is really powerful and helpful during those times. Sometimes going on a walk is really helpful.
Being in nature.
Being in nature is big. Probably one of my biggest experiences was just sitting in my backyard, staring at the oak tree. And I was just crying at all the things that were coming to me as I just sat there and watched the sun kind of set behind the tree. That was very powerful. But other times it's kind of curled up in bed with a blanket without saying a word, but just being inside with yourself, and then time to get help or to answer questions or something like that from others, from your sitter or from whoever you're sitting with. So set and setting, could not stress that enough. If you do end up doing it, I would strongly suggest that you don't be in a place where other people are doing something else. If they don't know, our kids actually do, so they will go into their rooms and just know that it's quiet time and that we're having one of our trips. But if it's something where you wouldn't be comfortable doing that, I would recommend that you go to a hotel or find a place where you can just be alone, or a couple if you're doing some of this stuff together. So find a sitter, a quiet, peaceful place, no distractions, no other people. Be thoughtful about it and make sure you do your own due diligence. You're going to have questions of your own. We certainly can answer some others after, tonight or at any other time if somebody has other questions that you come up with. Certainly from our experience, but you'll want to do some research here to see if you're comfortable doing, and if you're not. And if you don't feel comfortable, then don't do it. That would be my recommendation. Only do it if you really feel comfortable. The integration, as Trish talked about, allow time, sit with it. Journaling is huge. And then meditation practice and breath work, talking to someone to kind of get a sense to help work through some questions or feelings that might come up. A therapist can be very powerful. A partner can be very useful as well. And you'll find that a lot of people, as you have this discussion, we found that people have come kind of out of the woodwork who are like souls. And we have built kind of a network of friends who we have been able to support and who have supported us. So there are people who do that, right? And wherever you are, you can find community in that way. And that's actually very helpful.
A lot of people talk about, like, maybe you've heard the term like peak experiences. A lot of people are kind of, I don't know, they end up sort of seeking that rather than like getting the real value out of the singular experience. And you're just not getting the full benefit if you're just going from one weekend to the next, or, you know, doing as many kinds of psychedelics as often as possible. You're just not going to maybe get the benefit from it. And then that's not to say you can't have fun with them, but I would just say using them mindfully just gets you so much more good. So just to have our final thoughts, like, we've mostly moved away from consistent psychedelic use, and now we use other modalities for healing and reconnection. So while we were in Costa Rica, we were introduced to something called breath work. It's like rebirthing breath work, or conscious connected breath work. And it just uses like an active, dynamic sort of breathing technique. And you can access altered states of consciousness with just this breath. So you can connect to emotions and triggers in the body, move them up and out so they can be integrated, similar to tripping, but it's much shorter and it's more accessible to a broader range of people. It's a lot safer for, you know, people who maybe can't participate in these kinds of with psychedelics. So, or
it's very complementary.
Yeah, and it's
and there's no altered state. It's literally just breathing.
Well, no,
I mean, it does alter state, but you're not.
But not
you're
like
not,
for a long
your mind
time.
doesn't go far away, right? It's actually just helps you go inside, which is beautiful.
So we ended up getting so much out of breath work that we decided to get certified and open like a small wellness center here on our property, and just to invite others into that that safe and powerful healing tool. So that's kind of what we focus on now. But psychedelics have been amazing for us, and we're so happy that we got to share this with you. And we're open to your questions.
Oh, thank you so much, Matt and Trish. That was incredible. I mean, oh my goodness, giving us all so much to think about. Yeah, let's ask questions. We can raise our hands. I have a question to start with. I have heard a lot of people say that they feel that these kinds of therapies are almost the only way to unravel your brain from high demand, high control Mormonism. How do you feel about that statement? I've heard people say that it's literally, you think you're recovered, but you're not until you dig deeper and go deeper, kind of in a way that you describe.
I think it's a really helpful way to unfuck your brain. The results vary, you know, based on intention, but yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I would say it's been very, very powerful in helping with that very thing.
Yeah.
I will say this, I didn't necessarily go in with that intention, but I found some of the things that I mentioned and listed were directly related to the framing that I had about my Mormon upbringing that weren't serving me, that directly helped me in the healing from that experience, from that lifetime of kind of programming. So absolutely, it does have a powerful effect. Whether it's directly related or even conscious of it or not, I found later it's been much easier to kind of take a step back, find peace, new perspective, definitely has helped that.
I think a lot of us spend a lot of time in our heads and we don't connect to the body where the information lies, like our issues are in our tissues, right? Like, and Mormonism is really, at least for me, it was very, like, I don't know, it's very in my head a lot about it. And I think that psychedelics were a really helpful step in putting down my ego, like turning off that default mode network, just long enough for me to like see things that I couldn't see when I was constantly in my head about everything. So yeah, anytime you can set your ego aside, you're gonna put down your programming and at least recognize the patterns. You may not change them, but you can see them. And that I think is a very important tool.
It's not, and the thing that I found is I never go into things with the intention of putting anything behind me that still serves. So there's still things that I feel very grateful for, that I still very much relate to, that I did learn through my upbringing, that I'm going to hang on to. But they're with a new perspective, right? And so I think a big part of the whole process, as we're all doing this, right? I'm sure everybody on this call can relate, as you try to figure out what are the things that live for you, what are the things you're going to take forward versus the things that maybe it's time to move on from or that have served their purpose. This is all just part of that same process. Anyway, I hope that helps. You've got a couple of questions here that if you want, I can read. I'll do one and maybe you do the next one.
Yeah, I was going to say, you guys go ahead and call on people and integrate the chat. I think there were some questions there. You guys just take it.
There's like 2 or 3. One says, do you also have a daily meditation practice or technique that helps you prepare for a trip that is intended as a guided journey? We do actually have a daily meditation practice, and we do breath work as well as meditation. Those are very regular for us. And we do those very regularly. Tricia's a lot more regular in one sense than I am, but we've both kind of got different ways and kind of methods of doing things, and they work beautifully. So I find that we lean a lot more heavily on the daily meditation and the breath work, because those things are very natural parts of a daily process, where some of the trips or the psychedelic journeys are more periodic events that are kind of intended as kind of go offline for a bit, do some real heavy lifting, where the other things that we've done are very easily and helpfully engaged in on a day-to-day basis. So we do daily meditation practice. We talk a lot about things. We actually do a sauna and a cold plunge almost every night. And even though that doesn't seem like it's related here, it actually is. So there's a very meditative place. We practice breathing, and we find that we have a lot of very powerful conversations and additional healing, relaxation, and purging of not in the way that the bucket kind of purging, but just a kind of a sense of relaxation and releasing of stress and other elements. So we've learned how to kind of integrate all of these different kinds of things and recognize the spiritual practice. So we can thank psychedelics for a lot of that, but then we're finding that there's a lot of ways to do it in a very healthy day-to-day practice, that it's a similar spirit, but without the medicine.
So another one of the questions was, what you described makes me wonder if starting this exploration may not be right for an elderly person. What do you think about the elderly trying mushrooms? So I have very little experience with people close to me that are elderly trying this, but every time we went to Costa Rica, there were many older people, some of them quite a bit older, taking ayahuasca right there with us, and they did great. I know if you've all seen, or you all should see, Michael Pollan's documentary on Netflix called How to Change Your Mind, How to Change Your Mind. it's so good. And one of the women he profiles is an elderly woman who I believe she had cancer, and taking mushrooms for her was a way to make peace with her death. And is beautiful. Like there's a lot of the research that's being done with mushrooms targets like end of life people, and they have a lot of anxiety and fear about death, and they're giving them mushrooms, and they're finding they're making peace with all these fears and having exceptional experiences just with like a single, night of mushrooms. So I mean, there are contraindications. There's, issues with heart, and like if you're on like SSRIs and things like that, you can't take ayahuasca. You can, I believe, take mushrooms. I won't say that for sure, but there are fewer issues with mushrooms. And I would just say, like, if an elderly person was drawn to that, they are for a reason. And why not, do some research and see if they can find someone that could help them do that. I don't see any reason why not if they're otherwise healthy.
We went and had conversations with each of the practitioners and basically had a bunch of questions and interviewed them to get a sense for how they do it, what they recommend. And we asked all these kinds of questions at the time as far as they related to us. And I would absolutely strongly recommend that you do any of that before you just jump in, because it's safe in many ways, but what it can do is distract you because you don't feel safe or in a place where you can really kind of relax. And so you kind of short circuit your own experiences. And so definitely you'll want to talk to people, and you'll feel really motivated to do it, or you might feel like you shouldn't. And my experience is it's just that simple. I think people, when they feel drawn to it, they really know that it's time. I don't know how to explain that in any other way, but every experience that I've had and everyone I've ever talked to, that's kind of how they feel.
Yeah, it's not logic, it's a feeling, and you have it or you don't.
But you just, you gather the information, and then you figure it out from there. Is a certain amount of fear or trepidation normal before having this experience? Yeah. I know setting is so important, as being very fearful of a bad trip beforehand detrimental to the outcome. That's a really good question. My experience is, if the fear that you're kind of feeling is like that nervous sense of I'm not sure what's happening or what's going to happen, kind of like you're getting to the top of the roller coaster and just about ready to go. That's a different kind of fear, and that one you'll sense as just being nervous, but also it's kind of a mixture of excited and ready, but also nervous because you're not sure what's going to happen, versus feeling like this is not right. And my experience is we've had, as Tricia mentioned, I've had a number of times where we've kind of come in and it said, maybe it's time. Do you think we should do a mushroom trip or something? And then I've just felt like, no, I just don't feel like that's the right thing.
And we
to
might
do.
Plan it, and that like an hour before go, no, that's
we
not
actually
right.
had planned it for last week and we canceled it because we just weren't in a place where we could really settle. The day was too hectic and we just didn't feel like it was a good thing, so we didn't do it. I think you'll know as you prepare for it, and just making sure you've done your preparation and blocked out time, and you'll feel whether you should. But if it's that kind of sense of, oh no, what am I doing? And I'm kind of excited, but I don't know what to expect, that is totally normal, and it doesn't ruin your experience at all. It actually tells me that you're actually taking it seriously and you are opening up and vulnerable to be able to experience what it is. If you didn't have that, I'd be more worried, honestly, because people who just kind of, hey, whatever, let's do a trip. I've seen young people do that were kind of raving or something, and they just don't. It's not really about the healing experience. It's more just kind of a party experience, which I would strongly not do. But of course, everybody's got their own experience. But when it comes to therapeutic sessions, then absolutely, you're gonna be nervous, but it's also can be a good sign. So hopefully that answers that question.
So the next question is, did you have to go out of the country for all the substance experiences, or is there a way to do ecstasy at a more local level? So, so in terms of ayahuasca, yes, we had to go out of the country. There
Just local
are
places.
there are local, or there are stateside places
And
that
legal.
are legal because they create it like under the umbrella of a church, and it's like a sacrament, so you don't have to go out of the country. In terms of,
And there are, by the way, those in Utah. If people are there, there are some in Utah.
and then in terms of ecstasy, I can't comment. It's illegal at this time, and yeah, we've taken it, maybe in the country, maybe not. It's complicated, which is why I mean, I don't know, even sharing it, we were hesitant to, but it was so remarkable for us and changed our lives so much that, you know, I did want to give it a plug. There, like I said, it is moving from a Schedule I drug to more of a therapeutic use, and you can get, you can find places that are offering it in research and get into their programs. I don't know how difficult that is, but that's a legal way to do it. And
It's called ketamine.
no, it's not.
That's one
She's talking
option.
about ecstasy.
Oh, ecstasy.
I'm talking about MDMA. Ketamine is another psychedelic that is legal, that is
Can be prescribed.
We've not taken it and don't know very much about it, but yeah, it can be prescribed. So
Okay, next question. Have you officially left the church, or has your evangelization of psychedelics led to any church discipline, considering you were in a high position? We were still in the church, but I was released from my calling when we did
started.
our first experience, and we have since resigned, both of us, from the church.
Our whole family is resigned.
Yeah.
And this is a picture of our cute 4 kids. So they've all resigned, and they're all amazing people. So just want to say that. If you work in a profession where you are drug tested, are these drugs that are tested, and how long do they last in the drug stream? Neither of us are drug tested. And how long do they last in the bloodstream? I know that I'm pretty sure that mushrooms leave the system fairly soon, but that would be something we haven't had to worry about.
There's different drug tests that screen for different things. Most people, they're screening for THC, or that's marijuana.
And that stays in the system a solid amount of time.
And then depending on what the screening is, it will mark based on what it is. So you'd have to see what kind of a drug screen it is.
Research.
That's right, to know which ones. I don't actually know how long things remain in the system, and we haven't actually had to do any testing, so I'd have to see. I do know that we do screening for certain things at my company when we're doing people that are onboarded in certain customers, but those drug screens are typically about marijuana, and that's pretty much it. So and that's they say up to 2 weeks it's in there, but you know, it could be 3 days or something. So you'd have to do some more digging on that one. I don't have enough information on that one.
So are there any more questions from anyone?
Yes, sir.
Landon has one, and then I have 2.
Yeah, I've got a question. It's kind of actually somewhat of a plug for our next book club. Are you guys familiar with Walter the Magician?
No.
So his name is Luman Walters. He's actually was called Walter the Magician and lived in Palmyra area at the time of Joseph Smith, and was actually a mentor for Joseph Smith. And he was a doctor in Europe and came over to the U.S. and he mentored Joseph Smith in kind of the folk magic of the time, and went on to be, he was a physician and And some say that he was into the psychedelics, and that that's where Joseph Smith may have learned the psychedelics and was able to get people to see some of these visions that he had. So that's something that as we do the magical worldview in our next book club, Walter the Magician and some of these very things that you're talking about are some of the ideas that maybe is how some of these people saw some of the things that they saw, and some had some of the experiences they had. So
I would not be surprised at all.
Based on things that we've seen and like experiences, like of course Joseph Smith got that from.
I've actually read a historical book. I can't remember the name of it, but the conjecture was that that there was ancient pottery that had wine and mead from way back into the pre-Christian days, all the way through early Christianity, that there were psychedelic properties in the wine and in the meads that was part of what they were saying, the burning in the bosom and the visions and healings that were included in early Christianity, in pre-Christian religions, paganism, other types of practices. Very fascinating. And I could certainly see how those connections could be there. There is definitely a transcendental experience here that makes complete sense with that kind of.
One thing they pointed out was that to have these experiences, you had to participate in the sacraments and the ordinances, and which was an opportunity to maybe lace something with some of these psychedelics, which would then let you, like the temple ordinances and the sacraments that when they had the coming in during the Kirtland Temple and the big experiences they had there, and then the fact that the three witnesses couldn't see anything, and then eventually they did. It's kind of like, did they have to wait a few minutes for something to kick in? So interesting anyway, or an interesting philosophy. So it's interesting to see if you had any similar experiences or that you say, yeah, that possibly could be a something that could happen. So
right.
Get that.
Yeah.
One more question.
I think there was one on the chat, and then I have kind of a concluding question. So
Okay.
I'll ask mine last. I think Ariel had one in the chat.
How would one go about finding a shaman? Is it just about who you know? I mean, I think that's probably the hardest thing. I mean, I would ask your most likely friend, like you if you don't have those conversations and you suspect that maybe they would know something, it's usually a local, somebody who knows someone who knows someone. Utah is a different culture, and there's a lot going on in Utah. With things that we hear about. I don't know how many of y'all are in Utah, but here it's more difficult. We've had to fly places, friends of friends of friends, that kind of thing. I would say that's kind of a challenge. But like ayahuasca, there's a built-in shaman generally with that experience. Nobody's just like getting access to that, and
you would never do ayahuasca without a shaman.
You wouldn't.
And when you go, it's typically it's a built-in experience,
and those are pretty easy to find. Like an ayahuasca shaman is pretty easy to find.
You can actually Google a lot of this and find pretty much anything. You'd be surprised. So I would start there, and then if you have some folks that you might have had some experience, that can give you some local connections with someone who you trust.
Yeah.
There's also online people who you can talk to at least, and then connect that way. I would probably never recommend that you do something online like a virtual type of thing.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of an experience. So
it's all about
you should be in person with your experiences.
An earth and spirit medicine shaman, that may be something in St. George. That wouldn't surprise me. So cool.
Plug in a book, of course, because we're a book club. So I guess my last two questions, this has just been incredible. Maybe tell us a tiny bit more about what you guys are actually doing, what you said on your property. That sounds amazing. I'd like to hear a little bit more about that. And then just would you be willing to I don't know, email me some resources that you know of, and I'll make those available to everybody. If you have anything that you suggest, a book or a podcast or, just something like that, and I'll make it available to our book club members. A lot of book club members and other people will probably watch this. Not being able to attend tonight, we find we have sometimes twice as many that actually watch it since it's recorded. So I'd love to have some resources to share if there's anything you suggest. So
Great, we can do that.
Happy to do it. Yeah, we've got a lot of reading, research, podcasts, documentaries, books, hours and hours of things that we've spent a lot of time on before we ever jumped in. And then since then, I've continued to do it. So
Yeah, but we can curate a little list for you.
yeah, we'll send you some resources and places to start.
How did our son get so tall? We are not sure.
he's so cute.
We fed him really well. I don't know. But Rebecca, in terms of like what we're doing,
Yeah.
it's really cool. I would encourage anyone to kind of look it up. It's called it's a version of holotropic breath work. Holotropic breath work is different in the sense that it's like a 3-hour breathing experience. The kind that we are certifying in is a lot shorter, and essentially it's like an active meditation, and you lay on the ground, you've got a mask on, you've got like a curated playlist, and you are again taught to breathe in this specific way, and within a few minutes you will go into like an altered state of consciousness wherein you might see visions, you might start sobbing, you might start coughing, you're very likely to purge your things that you just, I don't know, it's the whole gamut. Like you can have anything happen, but it's generally a way, like you deeply oxygenate the body, and that just gets things moving, energy moving in your body, and it really has a way of connecting the mind, body, and soul in a way that psychedelics are able to as well. And it's just really accessible and really powerful. So we love it. So we're learning it and teaching it to other people and sharing it. And when we open this little center, we will be able to host groups and have small retreats and do some really cool stuff with it. So we're excited.
Happy to answer any questions about any of that.
What's that?
Book club field trip.
Yes.
Sometimes we go places. I'm not kidding. We're going to LA in a month or so. So I'm thinking
with an
let's look at
emphasis
our
on
calendar.
trip.
Yeah.
Hey, we will love to do it. In all seriousness, it's
No,
it's a
I'm not
beautiful
kidding either.
experience.
That
Yeah.
seriously, no, this is amazing. And those of you that are even closer, like in Texas, I mean, that's what I mean. When you give us resources, give us contact information if you'd like for how to get in touch with you guys if anyone's interested in doing that, because I think this is incredible. So wow, what an evening. Have we answered all the questions? I think we have. Otherwise, Melinda has been.
Sorry. Do you have to be like, when you started talking about the breath work, do you have to be kind of susceptible to like hypnotism to be successful at it? Because I can't be hypnotized. So
No,
Are
it's
you
not
sure?
that, actually. It's just you get into kind of a zone, really. It's really just a sense of relaxation in your body, but you're not going to get it into, I don't get hypnotized either. I could never do that. But interestingly enough, I find it as deeply meditative experiences. And I personally have not had a whole bunch of visions or anything like that when I've done psychedelics, but I've had powerful visions when I did breath work.
Yeah.
So I completely surprised me, but I had very powerful lucid experiences that were amazing. And that was just with the breathing. So that actually is amazingly powerful. And everybody reacts to do different things in different ways. And this might be a good way to cap it off here, Rebecca, is as you are finding places, these modalities, as they're called, resources, shaman and other people, spiritual guides, books and other things, you'll find that each of these things is a tool that you'll respond to differently. Some people don't like one thing at all and it doesn't work for them. And the next person is the best thing ever. And you kind of have to feel your way through it, right? So there's a little bit of trial and error, but with some guidance and some connection to some of these things, we found all the research or all the information we ever needed to have really good experiences. And then, you know, they're just different. Just plan on that. Nothing is ever going to be what you think it is. It'll never be exactly the same each time. And some things will take you by surprise in one way, and other things will be pretty subdued. So just being open to what that looks like, and just a curiosity is actually a really cool journey. So hopefully this has given you some food for thought, and if you have any questions, we're happy to follow up after as well. So thanks for having us tonight.
Wow, that was incredible. That was absolutely mind-blowing, I want to say.
Can I
Yeah,
just
I
add,
think, you know, oh, go ahead, Tom.
sorry, can I just add that Tricia is my sister?
This is true. We had an in to get them here.
And just to tie it
Tom,
to-
you're what? You're number 12 and she's 17.
I'm 11. And she's so here's how it works. I'm the last of the first bunch. There is so much to unpack.
You
So-
need psychedelics.
Yeah, no, seriously, I feel like my cat is flying right now. But yeah, she's the oldest of the second bunch, right? Are you you're the oldest, right?
One of twins.
The
Julie,
twin, I mean second born.
Yeah.
you're second. Okay.
There
Julie,
are 3 sets of twins in all these children between the 2 marriages.
okay.
It's pretty amazing. I know. Again,
Bring it all
psychedelics.
back. So yeah. Anyway,
No,
thanks,
this
Trish.
has just been amazing. And I think that, you know, the lazy learner is all about things that you're like, I'm curious about that, but I'm not sure who I can ask or how I can find out. And that's what this is all about, is in a safe space, you know, information provided in a very, you know, comfortable way. And this is exactly what's happened tonight. So excellent. So this is recorded. We will share the link. You can have the link to Matt and Trish if you want to share it with anybody that you know. We'll end by saying, if you're not a member of our book club and you'd like to find out more, you can find us on Facebook. That's our logo there. We're also on Instagram. You can email me at thegoodbookclub@mail.com if you'd like to participate in a few more of our things, because we have a lot of fun. And now we're going to go on a field trip to Austin. I'm not kidding. We're going to do it. So
Please, we'll love having you.
woohoo. So all right, let's stop our recording, everybody.